Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Counter Clipping Show number 213 for March 10th, 2025. Thanks, everyone, for stopping by this very fine evening. It is in the low 60s here in Northeast Ohio, so we are pleased about that. Though that does mean that the yard work will start shortly. We are drinking a gift that somebody sent along at Compass Expo. This is Whistle Pig Farm Stock Rye, bottled at 43%. It's pretty good, as whoever got me that knows. I do like American rye whiskey, and I don't know who it came from because it was passed to. I didn't go to Compass Expo last November. Somebody gave it to my buddy Kevin, who lives like 20 minutes from here. And Kevin, by the time I got it, which was like at Winterfest, Kevin didn't remember who gave it to him. So thank you, whoever you are. I do appreciate it, and it is pretty good. I did put a little bit of water in it, but it is excellent. So we are clipping ASL. I didn't put anything up behind me, but it's going to be ASL until further notice, pretty much. I think we have decided to play Beyond the Rhine OCS at Buckeye Game Fest instead of Forgotten Battles. I pitched Forgotten Battles, but it is slower paced than Beyond the Rhine would be, so we're going with Beyond the Rhine instead. It looks like I'm going to be playing one of the German positions in that thing. So before we get started, tonight's topic is, what is your next war game? Either the next one you plan to buy, or the next one arriving, or the next one you plan to play, and we'll get into all the different dimensions of that this evening. Before I get started with that, though, I'll remind everybody to please do like the video if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already, and big shout out to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, without whose support and encouragement we would not be able to continue doing this, and our good friends at Noble Knight Games, from whom we will hear later on, and who are the official sponsors of the Counter Clipping Show. So thanks, patrons, and thanks, Noble Knight. So I guess before we do that, let's say hello also to Achilles, Alistair Logie, Athena 2000 CE, B-Red, and Charles the Torah, Chet Bell, Christophe de Klerk, Dale Brady, Daniel Silverthorne, Danny Gable, welcome back. Dave Poirier, David Zell, DJ Flippy, Egret, Eric Goebel, Eric Selna, welcome to the show. Forlorn, welcome back. Garrison Venn, Grunyard Rich, Henry Hartman, High Flyer, welcome. The legend himself, Fucko, was in the house tonight. James Whitmer, Jeff Beeler, Jeff Edwards, Joe Hammond, Joe Okabayashi, John Mogg, Jonathan Dyer, Carl Creeder from the Wargame Bootcamp, Lee Grant, Mark McNair, Marty Sample is here. Meandering Mike is here, who will be our special guest on the next Chit Show next Sunday. I'm pinning Mike to it now. He has agreed already. Michael Avanzini, Mongo, Palmer Eldridge, Paul Dangle, Paul Sin, Richard Coker, Rob Johnson, Roy Scott Bell, Sean Sullivan, Stacking Limit is here. Stephen Rochelle Stigler is in the house. Stuka Joe, welcome Joe. Todd Cox, Vicky Filchak, and Wolf Dog. Thanks everybody for coming. Vicky, are you the regular Vicky? Because I'm not sure I knew your last name. In any case, all right. So I don't particularly have any news today, although I will mention that this is not the format, the medium for this, but I'll mention that the Charles S. Roberts Awards are underway for last year's awards year. So we're working on that, and we have an intense schedule of meetings slated in this weekend. Vicky, welcome back to the show. Didn't know that. Anyway, looking for a good introductory scotch, James Whitmer. The classic introductory scotch is Balvenie. I'd say Balvenie Double Wood, which is not, it's expensive, but it's not horrifically expensive. It's like 60 or 70 bucks. Or Macallan 12, which is the regular Macallan 12. There's a number of different Macallan expressions at lower price points, but the 12 is a good entry-level scotch. Neither of those are particularly heavily peated. If you would like to explore peated whiskey, then I would recommend Highland Park, which is part of their whiskey is peated, and part of but it's also sherried, so it makes the peat kind of different than say a Lafroig, for example. Oceans of Fire, I've got a copy of that. I would like to try that. I think Glenlivet is fine, but I don't normally buy Glenlivet because you can get Glenlivet at any bar pretty much. At least the regular Glenlivet stuff. I've got some Glenlivet Caribbean Reserve, I believe, up on the shelf here, and that's pretty good. And Glenlivet is good. It's just, I think it's a little less interesting because it's so ubiquitous. That is my personal opinion. Lots of people really love Glenlivet. but I am a Lafroig man personally. So, or Kalila, which is my favorite, or Lagavulin, but Lagavulin is expensive. So that is why I will typically, when I'm looking for that kind of scotch, I will typically pick Kalila or Lafroig instead. Lafroig's pretty different from Lagavulin, but Kalila has kind of a similar profile, in my opinion. So, all right. So I've got, like I said, I don't have any news. Let me throw the Discord link. I didn't prepare a Discord link, so I'm going to blab while I dig one up. For those not involved in the Ardwulf Discord server, there is one, and a robust discussion is regularly taking place there, so I would encourage you to do so if you are on Discord. Here is the link to the Discord chat. That's my advice anyway. I had a bad experience. I think a lot of people have had this happen. I had a bad experience with scotch in my teens. And, you know, when I wasn't supposed to be consuming such beverages, and it was a bad experience. And I didn't touch scotch again for at least 10 or 15 years. It was Macallan that got me back into it, that regular Macallan 12. It's really good. It's kind of overpriced nowadays, if you ask me. But it's not crazy. Last I checked, which it's been a bit. Last I checked, it's not crazy expensive. It's probably going to run you $80 or so a bottle here in Ohio. Anyway, liquor prices will vary by state. They are generally, for some reason, cheaper in California and more expensive in Ohio. Indiana, Pennsylvania, Kentucky prices are roughly the same. Sometimes a given brand will be a couple bucks more or a couple bucks less, but they're all about the same. And those are where I typically go. If you can go to Illinois, there's a beverage place called Binney's Beverage Depot, which has an excellent scotch selection if you are in the Chicagoland area, which is pretty much where those are at. Or Total Wine in Madison, Wisconsin, where they had a whole bunch of stuff that I can't get in Ohio. I wish I'd have bought 3 more bottles now that I think about it, but there you go. Ugh. Southern Comfort. Ugh. I'm not a fan of sweetened whiskey, particularly. There was for a while, I don't know if this is still going on or not, but there was a honey whiskey was hot for a while, and I thought it was disgusting. So the Costco Scotch Sampler. So Costco's in Ohio cannot sell alcoholic beverages, at least the full proof stuff. So I have no idea. However, if you can buy scotch at your local Costco, I would recommend trying them because whatever they have will be at a very good price. For a while, the standard Kirkland scotch was Macallan, and you couldn't touch it for anything resembling that price. But like I said, you can't get that here in Ohio. So, all right. Michael Evanzini says that the game's coming this week. Labatide Ekmol, which I do have now, and Blue and Gray Deluxe, which is pretty new from Decision Games. Swedish Volunteers for ASL. I do have this. I bought it when it came out. Did they reprint it? Is there a new printing of it? Because it vaporized. I thought it vaporized fairly quickly. It's kind of a gimmick piece, in my opinion. I don't think Swedish Volunteers particularly need their own counter color, for example. It's kind of nice to have the scenarios, but I don't know why they're not just minors like everybody else. And Napoleon, for me, Napoleon's Counter-Strike just arrived today. I haven't not even removed it from the shipping carton yet. So 40 Creek Rye, I've heard good things about. There are good Canadian whiskeys, just like there is good wine, but I can't tell you what to get because I don't know anything about those topics. Mo is the person I would ask about Canadian whiskey because he knows of several very good ones, highly drinkable Canadian whiskeys. In general, my experience with Canadian whiskeys is stuff like Canadian Club and what's that other thing? The thing that comes with the dice bag. So I am not a Canadian whiskey expert, and I'm not I'm not an expert on any topic like this, but I know more about Scotch and somewhat less about bourbon and rye and I'm okay on Irish whiskey. Canadian whiskey, I just don't know. Crown Royal, there you go, Vince Ree, thank you very much. The nice thing about Crown is you do get the free dice bag, the free bottle of whiskey with the nice dice bag that you bought. They are great dice bags. I will say. But yeah, those are perfectly decent to mix with stuff, though. There's nothing really wrong with them. It's just that I tend to drink drinks neat now, and those are not amenable to drinking neat out of a Glencairn. American single malts are also kind of big nowadays, right now. There you go. I have not yet gotten a shipping notification from GMT, but I would imagine that given the topic tonight, and this is a good segue into that, my reaction exactly. Given the topic tonight, I think that a bunch of people are probably going to mention things that are showing up in this GMT shipment. And they are shipping. People are getting their stuff. Just not me yet. It's fine. I'm not bent about. Really, I'm not bent about it. It's fine. It's fine. I do like Jameson. I tried Bushmills, but I tried it like when I was 20, and I didn't like it at the time. I might give it another shot at some point. Redbreast I've never tried. Somebody had like a Jameson Special Reserve at Penzic one time. Boy, was that good. That was good. So, and Jim Beam is, you know what? Drinking Jim Beam on the rocks, I really don't have an issue with that. So, neat? Nah, no thanks. And I wouldn't even buy it as a mixer, to be honest about it. But if I'm like at a bar and I need a drink, and I can get a Jim Beam on the rocks, and I'm pretty happy with that. I will drink a lot on the rocks, though. I'll happily drink Dewar's, the regular Dewar's, on the rocks. So I should give Redbreast a try, actually. Oh, excellent. James Whitmer received Hoplite, and that will be the next one on his table. That is fantastic. Hoplite is one of those BOH games that I have not yet played, but I do anticipate getting it to the table at some point. So, I don't know if I sounded like Hannibal Lecter particularly. My wife says that if I get exactly into the right vocal range, I sound a lot like George Takei. Now I did it on purpose. See, if sometimes it just comes out, and when I do it on purpose, it sounds very hammy. So Lee Grant, thanks so much for the support and the good recommendation. Goretzky's Maple Cask Bourbon. So is that, I assume that is on the Canadian side of Niagara. And there is a game convention up there, actually. I forget exactly what it's called. Niagara Game Fest, perhaps. It's run by maybe a bunch of people, but I know about Ardwulf, who's one of the people running that thing. So, and it sounds like a good event. So, anyway, hold on. Oh my, that wasn't that good. I've done better. Anyway. So I could bust that out basically at any time. Very nice. Richard Coker found a copy of Point Blank V for Victory at Second Chance Games, and delivery arrived faster than my recent domestic games. Now you go. Miami Board Gaming Weekend. Marty, do you go to that event? Achilles is working on OSG Highway to the Kremlin 2. That's a neat looking game. I haven't touched that yet either. So if I have to give up any type of whiskey, I would choose to give up Canadian whiskey because I'm not that familiar with it. As long as Scotch is okay, then I'm good. And as long as I can get American rye, I'm good. And I'll drink bourbon too. I like bourbon, but I like Scotch better. I think it has a more complicated flavor profile and is more interesting to me. Christoph de Klerk drank rum once from a guy who put chili peppers in a rum bottle, closed it, and let it stand for a while. Ugh. I've had the pepper absolute or absolute pepper as they call it, and it tastes like it was boiled with green peppers were boiled in it. It did not. You could make an absolutely stellar Bloody Mary out of that stuff, but I'm not sure I can think of another use for it, to be honest. So Marty doesn't go anymore. Yeah, let's stick away from the politics, folks. I know that it has been mentioned in the chat already. The no politics rule, that is. People aren't here for that. and neither am I. So I think I probably won't get Napoleon's Counterstroke on the table anytime soon. But I've got like all the other games in the series, so it is more possible that some game in the series will appear before that does on my table. I think whenever I get the time to actually do this, I will be removing the big breakdown of Army Group Center while keeping the small scenario maps. I'm going to still want to try and play a couple of the smaller scenarios from that. It is on my list of games to get played this year. But I will, in doing that, I will free up roughly half the table, and I will be able to set down Glory and Empire First Victories from Lock and Load Publishing, which has arrived. There will be an unboxing video of that along in the next week or two. The new work schedule is kind of screwing the unboxing things up, unless I can do it on Wednesday night, which is very unlikely for me to do editing work on that particular evening. But you will see it at some point pretty soon, and I want to do another Harn video as well. Somebody asked in the chit show last night, Eric from sunny California, where Costco does sell scotch, and I know because I bought it there. But there you go. I mean, I have cluttered the table up with just crap multiple times and have had to clean it off. So it is not too bad right now, except that Army Group Center, which I am currently not playing, is set up there. After that, the likely next game is probably going to be Congress of Vienna. And the reason for it's either going to be Congress of Vienna or Alliance from Columbia Games. And that is because I am running both of those things at Origins this year. So I would like to have some experience and not go in completely cold to that. And I don't imagine it's going to be much of a problem to get both of those games down. Alliance in particular has 8, 12, 10 pages of rules, something like that. So it's very easy. And I just need to kind of feel out the dynamics. I've read the rules already, but like I said, it's short. I expect Congress of Vienna to be somewhat more complicated, but I'm also looking forward to that. Arriving in my GMT shipment will be the errata counter sheet, the World at War supplemental counter sheet, the Battle for Normandy, and Congress of Vienna, which is why I have an official excuse for not busting out Congress of Vienna yet. Mark Herman, thanks for stopping by, Mark. Good to see you. But that is what is likely to occur. And Battle for Normandy will get played, but I kind of have a hunch that it might be. We've kind of been waiting for that for a while to do it at Winterfest, and I think that's probably going to be what we think about doing for next Winterfest. So there you go. There you go. Well, yeah, I hope it does, Mark. And if it doesn't, it is excellent anyway. Balvenie, I love Balvenie. Balvenie, probably my favorite distillery in Scotland is probably Balvenie, because everything I've had from them has been absolutely dynamite. So, it'll be I don't have time to deal with it in the next couple of weeks, but thanks, Mark. I played Plains Indian Wars at SD HistCon, and I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I will probably pick that up at some point. No, I will be running. Well, I'm already committed. The problem here, Jeff, is I am already committed to running the required number of slots at the convention. So they do count my badge, but I'm also running 4 slots of one seminar for the War College. I think it's 1 slot of Congress of Vienna and 2 slots of Alliance. I would love, usually there's a couple of Traveler games at Origins, and I've occasionally been able to hop into one. The last one I played was about 3 years ago, I think, and it was the published module of Death Station, which at the time had been relatively recently redone by Mongoose. Seth Skorkowski revised it. If you're into Traveler and not following Seth's channel, you are doing yourself a grave disservice. So, British Albion has watched an unboxing. I think I saw the unboxing, but I saw it in the subscription feed, but I didn't see who it was. There you go, Wolf Dog. Thanks so much. Much appreciated in that case. Emperor of the Sun is always a great choice, actually. If I had to pare down to like 20 war games, Emperor of the Sun would be on that list. But then again, Pacific War probably would too. So, and there is a GCACW event in Chickamauga, and there's an SPI event at Historicon in Lancaster, PA, and both of those are coming up. I don't have dates on either of those things. So there you go. RDF, or Rapid Deployment Force, I should say. So, I probably have seen it or heard of it, but it was like, well, I'm not into this. So I am positive that based on Zilla's recommendation, there's probably a terrific game. I'm not really sure I'm going to try that. So if I'm going to do games that aren't war games or RPGs, then, well, let me put it a different way. If I'm going to play a Euro, I have very narrow taste in Euros. I've got, like I've said, I think I have about 6 games that I would consider just straight Euros. Lords of Baseball is one of them. Eclipse is another one. Hegemony is another one. I've got at least one more. Lords of Waterdeep. So maybe it's only 4. I'm not sure. Just thematically, I am like, I don't see any reason for me to be interested in it. On the other hand, if like I'm at a convention or a club or something like that, and I got nothing to do, and somebody says, "Hey, want to play this? It's called Obsession." I would try it. Why not? So just because it's not necessarily something that I am like into topically, does not necessarily mean I won't have fun with it. I've had a similar experience with train games. I don't play a lot of train games. I reliably play about a train game every 10 years. And I have had a good time when I have played train games, even though I am not particularly into train games. You can't just hop in with the 18XX folks at the club, though, because those guys played every week, and it would be absolutely insane. If I was to hop into that, I would get erased in minutes. So, Napoleon's Wheel. Napoleon's Wheel's a really good choice for a number of reasons. It's a good entry point to the system because it's got a couple of small battles, a couple of really big battles, one of which is Austerlitz, and it's the last game in the series. It's the only game in the series that comes with the universal deck. So there used to be like a different deck in each game, and now they don't put the decks in the games. Now you just buy the universal deck, and you take specific cards out. There's a list in each game. And it's a little expensive, but if you're into the series, then you kind of, I would recommend trying to play the Library of Napoleonic Battles with the cards. I'm not positive I prefer it with the cards. I kind of don't, actually. But I do recommend that you try it because they're in there, right? So there we go. Mark, I'll catch you when I catch you. It's all good. Have a great rest of the night. But I would recommend trying it with the cards rather than just poo-pooing the cards. At least give it a shot, and if you hate it, don't do it again. That's cool. So... Austin Reidiger, thanks for stopping by. What is Anvil of Fate? Is that Montelimar? Okay, yeah, that's Montelimar. I've got that one. I'd like to try it, and at some point I probably will. So, at some point, this is a concession that many of us sometimes have to make. You play the games that the people you're playing with are interested in playing. And if not everybody wants to play Case Blue tonight, then I guess we're not doing that. Although I've got duct tape too, so be warned. There is somebody meaning somebody here tonight dumped a lot of OCS games on the Constant Marketplace on Facebook, and I think they're mostly gone already. I think there's a DAC 1 and a GB2 last I checked. So that's pretty much what I'm, and I guess I want to say this because some people are getting really kind of irritable about their February 5th shipment not showing up yet, and it's March 10th. As long as it ships soonish, I'm good. It's not like I don't have anything to play. It's not like I'm going to get to Battle for Normandy right away, of all friggin' things. I will get to Congress of Vienna pretty quickly. The other thing I want to play actually is like actually play a whole game of. I kind of noodled with it. Is I Napoleon. So I didn't claim the GB2. Did I claim the GB2? I might have. So I don't know if I think I forget. I was thinking about it. I know that. I don't know. I forget what my actual language was. I'll have to review the texts with John about that. If he sells it for that price from under me, that's fine. It would be basically a duplicate copy for me. But I really like GB2. I think it's an outstanding entry in that game. Yes, that is Burning Empires. What's next to it is... what is next to it? Blades in the Dark, Band of Blades, which is both of which are Apocalypse Engine games. I have tended to be a little wishy-washy on the Apocalypse Engine game RPGs. I've played several of them at this point, and I really didn't like Dungeon World particularly. I did like Band of Blades. Band of Blades? Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark. That's what I've played. And the rest of the stuff on the other side of it is the rest of the stuff from the Burning Wheel / Burning Empire guys. I said guys. I don't know if they're all guys or not. So I will. Yeah. So these are a shipping. So we can confirm that. And all of this stuff is shipping. Unlike what everybody else seems to do, it sounds like Lock and Load is shipping like one game at a time. So they like shipped whatever they shipped first. And then at some point after that, once that's done, they will start shipping the next batch of things, because a lot of people probably ordered some of the product, but not the others. I was personally not really interested in most of the stuff that they had kickstarted, but I was super interested in Glory and Empire, and pretty interested in Close Quarters Battles Waterloo. So there will be an unboxing of that as soon as I get the video. Actually, I haven't even filmed that unboxing yet. It's still sitting there in a shrink wrap. So I haven't had the chance to do it. There's a lot of stuff going on here, folks. So New Cold War is on pre-order from VUCA. That looks pretty intriguing. I'm kind of interested in that. I want to hear more about it. There's another game that's superficially at least similar called New World Order from the same people that did Hegemony, and I did the Kickstarter for that, so that'll show up at some point. So that'll probably be a €50 for me, actually. Are there 2-player Euros? Or Euros that at least are decent with 2 players? I would be curious. Obsession. For those of you who have played Obsession, let me know if it's good with 2 players. So there you go. So stay tuned to Joe. If you're not subscribed to Joe, what are you doing here? But stay tuned for Stuka Joe's upcoming coverage on New Cold War. I am pretty impressed with the stuff I have seen in general from VUCA and Nuts Publishing and Hexasim and a number of European, and for that matter, I don't have a lot of Europa Simulazioni, but I've got 2, and those look good. So, you know what, Doug? Thanks so much. First of all, thanks for stopping by. I don't have the board game, but I actually bought the digital game. It was like on sale for like $1.99 or something like that on Steam. It's like a set matching card type thing, I guess, where you're matching different kinds of birds. I mean, that sounds fun. In a not my thing kind of way, but I would give it a shot if I'm looking for something to play with the wife who won't play war games, and there ain't no RPG stuff happening right now that she will play. So Marty says Obsession works with 2 players. So, Lost Cities and Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders, I would consider. I could probably play that. Since it's in the same general space of games as Civilization, I think a Seven Wonders Duel is its own thing. I'm aware of that, but I haven't I'm not sure what's up with this, Jeff, because I've had mine for ages, and I didn't do anything special to get it. I just ordered it like everybody else. So I would, at this point, I would recommend reaching out to GMT and asking what exactly is going on. So I've played Terraforming Mars. I don't own Terraforming Mars, and I don't plan to purchase it, but I will play it. It's fun. I mean, it's a perfectly serviceable Euro-type game. Lord of the Rings, Seven Wonders Duel? That sounds very complicated. Very complicated indeed. There is, the new, I think there's been like a follow-up that's similar from the same designer. And I don't know if this is the first follow-up or the second, could be the fifth follow-up for all I know. But the current follow-up to Wingspan that just came out is Wormspan, where it's dragons. I could be talked into that. I'm not buying it. It's a big box. I didn't even look at the price. I assume that it is expensive. So there you go. Hosted unboxing. There you go. So if you want to see an unboxing of that before mine, check out Eric's. That looks promising, actually. That was something that kind of came out of nowhere for me. And I'm like, oh, look at this. This actually looks interesting. So, Battles for Quebec from Clash of Arms. Banish All Their Fears. So I did not get in on the pre-order for Banish All Their Fears. I was like, it's like another fork off of Musket and Pike. That's fine, but it's like, I don't know. It's not like they're battles I gotta have games on, right? And then somebody brought it over, and I was looking through it, and I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. I am very interested in the command system is it Ben Hull solo design, or is there a co-designer on that? I don't remember. But it looks pretty interesting. So before the follow-up comes out, I would sure like to play one of the scenarios out of Balance All Their Fears, so I know if I like it or not. That would be cool. Hexasim Fallen Eagles 2. So here's the other thing, though. Even though these games look good, and I like some of the command stuff that these games do, they are nevertheless on the table of games being considered for removal. Because I haven't played them, and I'm not sure I'm going to at this point, and it isn't like I'm short games on those particular battles. Now, if on the other hand, they were to do, say, Ekmol or Aspernestling or something like that, then that would cause me to revise that decision in a hurry. But right now we've got Waterloo, Wav, and Quatrabra, I think, or is it Ligny instead of Wav? I think it's Ligny. And then Austerlitz. That's what we have. That series is moving, I think, to Fellowship of Simulations. Walter Vodovsky, who's the designer, I think he's the main fellow over at Fellowship of Simulations. So they are another European publisher that is worth keeping an eye on. And if you do have, you're not sure where to get that stuff, Noble Knight carries all of it. So there's that. Watergate I had it at one point. It was inexpensive. It was like 20 or 30 bucks. I had it at one point, and it's kind of in the same space as Twilight Struggle, like the Twilight Struggle mini games. And I have heard it's good, but I haven't played it, and it is no longer with us. So, yeah, I mean, if she wants to play that, cool. I would be all over that. So, the last thing we tried to play like that was the Lord of the Rings customizable card game, and then I didn't read the rules in advance, and I was like, what the fuck am I even doing here? I don't know what's actually even going on. So I'm not saying there isn't. But so when there's an actual RPG thing hosted by me in the house, as opposed to online, she will play that. That is no problem. I also, Marty, was scratching my head about this. I think Terraforming Mars is a good game. I don't know why anybody would need an RPG of it. I just don't have any idea why anybody needs that. Then again, if it ain't for me, it ain't for me. That's cool. I can just not buy it. Cool. All right. Finspan. Okay. Fish. That's great. Probably not generally interested in that. I have played Settlers of Catan or whatever they're calling it now, and it's a good game too. We have a copy of it in the house that is still in the shrink wrap. Calico, believe it or not, I have played. Wasn't not really my thing. But I have played that, actually. Played it in Seattle at the Mox boarding house, actually. That was cool. Now I have... Ooh, yeah, that's another one. That is a fifth one. This is a straight Euro. Dune Imperium. It's got a bunch of different elements from different Euro type games, but it's good. It's. I mean, the thing that jumps out is worker placement, but there's like a couple other things in there too. And it's pretty good. I've played the digital version, not the board game, but I have the board game. So I just saw Wormspan at the local game store. So Chad Kennedy, thanks so much. Much appreciated. Other than Hero City, any news on what the next OCS game might be? I don't really have any news on that. But Hero City should be along at some point in the not terribly distant future. There's who's the designer of this? Is it Stefan Aquaviva, I think, is designing that Kursk game? I might be getting that right, or I might not be. And that looks like it might be interesting. Other than that, I have seen a playtest map for the Battle of Britain thing, or Sea Lion, or whatever they're calling that. I'm not really, it's probably both, to be honest. But I don't know. I want to know more about it before I decide to buy it. But if it gets released, I'm going to probably buy it because it is an OCS game after all. I have to say, I do still like East Front stuff. I'm more interested in West Front in a lot of ways. But I play a lot of East Front stuff, and I'm not particularly broken up about that. So, Watergate has nothing to do with Mr. President. I'll tell you what, there is a ton of potential in Mr. President to do like custom scenarios where Mr. President, but you're Lincoln or Roosevelt or, some Washington or somebody, I don't know. Washington might not be a great choice, but, in times of crisis type of thing. That could be quite interesting. Should they decide to pursue that? Nice choice. Victory Game fleets are on the table at the moment. Somebody said something about DJ Flippy says try Austerlitz maybe, as it's better than Fallen Eagles 2. I have heard some negative stuff about Fallen Eagles 2, which is the Waterloo game, and apparently they revised it considerably. I will continue to keep an eye on that series, particularly since it's changing publishers. So, next game, either one, Robert Lane. Next game you're playing, next game you're buying, next game you're ordering. Games on the horizon. Maybe I should have called it the show that, actually. Ooh. So, El Gran Capitan is from Europa Simulazione, maybe? I'm not sure, now that I think about it. I do have it. It looks pretty cool. It is actually, I think, the second game in a series, and I haven't looked at the other one at all, but I very much want to try that. I believe that Callendale has done some video on it. All right, Jonathan Dyer is doing the War Rooms 10-game challenge, the Fallen Eagles 2, Most Fearful Sacrifice, and We Are Coming Nineveh. I don't have We Are Coming Nineveh. I would really like to try that, but I kind of don't want to buy it unless I know I like it. It has gotten rave reviews, and I would very much like to try it. And in fact, I was set up to try it at SD HistCon, and that event just didn't happen. For whatever reason, so. And yeah, I've been waiting ages for the new Battle for Normandy as well, and Battle for Sicily, for that matter. I think that Dan Holt, who is the designer of that, I had to think about that for a second. I had something else in my head. Is a pretty good designer, based on, I guess, the one game from him I've played, Battle for Normandy. So. Chris Yap, thanks for stopping by. Aliens, another. So I'll tell you what, I don't even know what this product is. Okay. I believe it is from, Free League. Is it Free League or I don't even know. I have it. Not this product, but I have the core book. And I don't see any reason to play it, but there's probably things in it I can salvage for Traveler. They do have a product called Another Glorious Day in the Core, which I think is some kind of tactical thing, but I'm not sure because I am not following that product line. And it is one of the best titles I have seen in hobby gaming. Let me put it that way. Or adventure. We'll call it adventure gaming. How about that? Like they used to in 1980. It is very close between that and a product for the Star Wars RPG from West End Games called Wretched Hives of Scum and Villainy, which I think we can all agree is a fabulous title. All right, so Banish All Their Fears is a co-design. I suspect that the much of the criticism stems from the presentation of the rule book. And I have looked through the rule book, and I believe I can handle it from what I can see. Not in terms of complexity; it's not that complicated, but it's not simple. But you know what I'm saying? It's 6 or 7 on the GMT scale. I've had worse rule books, like way worse rule books. Let me put it that way. And that's something that we as wargamers maybe should be less willing to put up with, shitty rule books. And I'm not going so far as to call this particular one shitty, but there are other rule books, like the original Gauss rule book. That was a shitty rule book. And I managed to play that. So, it's not going to be as bad as the first Gauss rule book. All right. Forlorn, thanks for stopping by. One board game that sticks out is Power Grid. I've seen that on tables quite a lot, actually. But I have never played it and have no particular interest in it. But again, this is another one of those things like Obsession. I'd probably be more likely to play Power Grid, just, availability aside. Churchill, yeah, I mean, bring it. I would seriously do that. But we also do have, Churchill, Mark Herman's Churchill is not about Churchill. It's about the big three and the conferences, right? So I think this is a branding issue for GMT. But I think that as a game idea, I think this has tons and tons of potential. Carl is got Axis Empire's Totaler Krieg from the new one or one of the older versions, Carl. The new one I am very impressed with thus far. The only part of it that I have played, I've gone through the Dice of Decision procedure a couple of times now. Most of the rest of the game is not. There you go. Thanks, Joe. Most of the rest of the game is not very different from the previous version, although there's a lot of little tweaks here and there. And there's a bunch of things that are added, but they are all optional. So not all, but a lot of them are optional. Yeah, the next Eagles of so that series from Hexasim that I mentioned, which includes Fallen Eagles 2, and there's an Austerlitz game and a Quattrobar game and a Ligny game. Those games are available from Hexasim, and I think you can get it from GMT. If you don't have an easy way to get those here domestically, but that series is moving to Fellowship of Simulations. So, Crowbar Rangers at Point to Hawk. I know it's Herman's system. Is Herman the designer on that? So yeah, All Is Lost Save Honor was the first game, but like I said, I haven't really looked at it. Very nice. Sagacious Hamster, it's been a long time. Thanks for stopping by. Battle for Normandy goes up on the table this week. Oh, it's a real good game. I like it a lot. So, all right. Let's see what Scott Bell's doing for Game More in Oregon. BSNB, BNT, U.S. Civil War, Atlantic Chase, Longstreet Attacks, and Congress of Vienna. I don't know what those first two things are off the top of my head. Even I cannot keep up with all of the acronyms, after all. Yeah. I mean, the RPG. This is not the first Alien RPG, by the way. There was one from Leading Edge Games, I think, back in the 90s, which was not a good game. And I don't, again, to me, this is a one-shot type of thing, which if I wanted to do that, cool, I'll just use Traveler for that. I don't need their special system for it. Inflection Point for BCS is another one of those games that's going to end up being on a highly anticipated list of mine. Very interested in seeing that. I would like to generally see more East Front stuff for BCS, but then again, I'd kind of like to see whatever Carl would like to do. I'd be perfectly happy with. So, almost everything that is even being discussed for BCS is not only something that I am interested in, but something that I would be delighted to play. So DJ Flippy liked it. So there you go. Don't pay attention to me. All right. So apparently, Another Glorious Day in the Core is considered a skirmish game. And Jeff Beeler fills in some additional details as well. Chris, yeah, I saw a whole bunch of people playing Wolfpack at SD Hist, and it looks pretty interesting. I think there's a lot of potential there, and I would like to try that as well. I did not pick it up, which is, at some point GMT will have another sale. I'm not probably going to want to spend a ton of money on that, but I am definitely intending to order France 40, which is another thing that I didn't get from P500 for some reason, and I'm not even sure why. The new version of France 40, that is. Well, I mean, I do think it's more complicated than any given game being crappy. I think that we as a hobby have historically been reasonably forgiving about rules presentation that is maybe not very good at teaching people the game. There are some games. I think we might have mentioned this on the Chit Show, which if you haven't watched the Chit Show, we had Zilla Blitz on last night. It was a great show. It felt like it was like 20 minutes, and it was a whole hour. I'm like, oh, shit, we're out of time already. So I think that we as a hobby have been very forgiving of that kind of presentation issue, right? Now, there is a decision to be made by somebody that's involved in the game as to whether you want to point the book at people learning the game or point the book at people who already know the game but need a reference, right? It is my opinion, based on no evidence whatsoever, that is not a conscious decision that most wargame designers even make. I think that they present rules largely in the way wargames have generally presented rules since about early 1970s. And I'd like to see us put a little more thought into that. I think you could have better leverage of technology. Like what if we had, for example, an ASL rulebook that was hyperlinked, right? And we have a digital rulebook now, and that's great. But what if we had one that was hyperlinked? So you said, okay, see section 3.2.2, click, and you're at section 3.2.2. That sounds to me like it would be insanely useful. And I am not sure that anybody has HTML or any kind of hyperlinked rules document, at least as an official product. In wargaming, there are some in RPGs, but that gets a little more complicated. And I don't really want to get into that tonight. So, I will say GMT, is this kind of the standard bearer of the hobby nowadays, and they have been on both sides of this, even recently, right, where they have had games that are absolutely lavish with praise for their presentation and rules presentation in particular. And I'm thinking of Atlantic Chase. And at the same time, people complain about, Clash of Monarchs? Is it Clash of Monarchs or Clash of Sovereigns? I think Clash of Sovereigns is the one that just came out, I think. And apparently that had a bad enough rulebook that they're doing a revised rulebook for it. So there you go. Axis Empires Ultimate Edition. That is the new one. Eric Selna is teaching himself Next War Iran right now. This is another one that I might buy from GMT's sale because it is the only game in that series that I don't have. And I you know what? I have already been through the personal struggle with this of deciding, should I just get rid of this? Because I'm really not doing anything with it. We haven't made a lot of motion toward playing it. It gets mentioned from time to time, but that's it. I had it on like a to-go shelf at one point, and I pulled it off the to-go shelf, and I'm keeping it because I don't really see a lot of other activity in this kind of game in wargaming right now, which is, actual modern hypothetical conflicts as opposed to past hypothetical conflicts. So, all right. Adam Misnick says next game will be Revolutions. The Day Was Ours, which is a blind swords game. Napoleon's Eagles, Steam's Napoleon's Eagles. I need to look at the new War and Peace, the digital implementation. I have got the boxed game from One Small Step, and it is a tremendous graphical upgrade from the nigh unreadable bullshit counters that Avalon Hill used back in whenever that was. And so for that reason alone, I think it's almost worth the upgrade. But what ends up happening is they do a Kickstarter, and then they ship the Kickstarter, it sells out, and it's going for a fortune, and then they do another Kickstarter. I think there's another one coming or up or something like that. So for those who are interested in that new War and Peace, check out the digital version. It is on Steam. So, and of course, another of my most anticipated games of the year is by Swords and Bayonets by our very own Stigler. And I think I saw up thread here in the chat that is likely to start shipping pretty quickly after they finish the current batch of stuff that they're obviously having trouble shipping at all. It is, to be fair to GMT, I think the biggest single batch of stuff that they've ever had to ship out. So that it's taken extra time is not surprising. And as long as I get it, well, at least a month before Origins, then I will start to become demonstrative, because then I'm on the clock, right? But that's months away. I don't anticipate that that's going to be a problem. So, all right, just trying to catch up on the chat here. Aaron Dennis, this is a great plan, right? Pull something off the shelf of shame, as we call it, that you have had for a while but still haven't played. That is a good strategy. Oh, okay. That's published by Gale Force 9. I'm not sure I knew that. Then again, I do not have that product. I do have their version of Dune, which is functionally identical anyway to the Avalon Hill Dune that came out in. There is a movie version of the cover with Sting on the cover. That would have been 1984, but the game is older than that. So I'm not sure if it was 70s, but it's if it was 70s, it was very late. It was late 70s, I think. And that's an excellent game, by the way. And I don't consider that a Euro. That is it's not a war game, but it's not. It's just, Euros are one thing and war games are another thing, and that doesn't fit into either category. And I'm not positive what you would call it. It may be that it was influential to Euros, but if that's the case, then I think you should probably go back to Cosmic Encounter, which I think shared designers with the Avalon Hill Dune. And which has some design similarities. I have played Cosmic Encounter exactly once. I had fun with it, and I have never played it again. And I've never owned it. All right, Forlorn says, thinks bad rulebooks are the result in not enough eyes on the text before publishing it. This is another thing that we used to kind of mention a fair amount. Is that rule books are technical writing, and technical writing is its own distinct discipline, right? It is not writing it's not like fiction writing or even nonfiction writing or historical writing. And again, this is another thing that I think a lot of people that write rule books in wargaming just don't think about. But it certainly wouldn't hurt to have more people looking at the rule book either, right? I mean, that is obviously true. Well, Skies of Storm Above the Reich also have Jeremy involved, so this is not. I don't have either of these games, but that's not surprising. I can also tell you that the the rules presentation in the Enemy Coast Ahead games is really good, and that's Jeremy as well. So I'm still not quite sure whether to call him Jerry or Jeremy, but he apparently answers to both, so I guess it's fine. Wade says that the ASL rulebook has links. Okay, that's great. If that's the case, then fantastic. So I like, a whole bunch of people are hopping in to correct me on this, which is great. So that is fantastic. And that may be, if so, that is maybe the only example I can think of, right? Which is interesting because there are a whole bunch of games that have, there might be an hyperlinked version of the World at War rules too, thinking about it. That is possible. If you go to worldatwar.com or whatever the site is, there's a couple of different ways that you can download the rules or the current version of the rules. And there might be an HTML version of them. And if so, I think that's fantastic. I generally prefer to have a physical book. This holds for RPGs, war games, whatever. I will generally prefer to read the rules in digital format when I'm reading the rules. But then when I am playing the game at a table, or sometimes even online, I would generally rather have the physical rulebook there to use as opposed to the digital rulebook. I think the digital rulebook, having done some play of RPGs online, I think digital rulebooks are kind of a pain to deal with. And when I have had that problem, I have just as often said, fuck it, and reached over to the shelf right here and grabbed a rulebook. So the physical rulebook where I find it easier to find stuff. So, all right, Jeff is also considering next run as a potential sale purchase. Carl, thanks for stopping by. How backed up am I? Not that bad. About 6 minutes. Shelf of Duds. Holy Roman Empire. Man, that looked so good. That looked so good. And then I did more research on it, and it was like there was it got a bit of a mixed reception, right? And I'm talking about the One Small Step version rather than the original, which was not something that I was paying attention to when that came out. I've heard mixed things about Tanto Manta too, and I expect that Tanto Manta, there's probably a very good game there. But I mean, I don't think the Here I Stand rulebook is the best rulebook, and I don't think the, say, Crown of Roses, for example, I don't think that's a very good rulebook either. So there's that. So I had a conversation at a convention at one point with John Zinsner, who is not a wargame guy, but I think the advice is pretty good and applies to wargames. Who was one of the partners or whatever, big shots at AEG. They did a bunch of RPG stuff. And he told me that the one really interesting and unexpected thing that he learned was never write. If you are the designer, don't write your own rule book. Have somebody else write the rule book for you. Because you understand it, presumably you designed the thing, and you're going to have a bunch of assumptions built into that somebody else will not have, and they will be able to more clearly explain the rules than you. And I think that general idea applies to war games as well. I will note that I think, was it Kai? It might have been Kai. That wrote the Pacific War rulebook for Mark Herman, and I think that was a really good call. The general rules presentation, I think, is pretty good in that. All right, so the new edition of War and Peace will also have a physical edition with bigger hexes and counters than the OSS version. Avalon Digital is doing great. Well, I got the OSS version, and I'm not buying another one. And for that matter, I think I have the Avalon Hill version for some reason. Even though, I mean, it's a good game, don't get me wrong, but I personally find the way that the information is laid out on the Avalon Hill counters to be very difficult to read, particularly when you are looking at the elite units, the guards, and the miners. They're very hard to tell apart. And I'm not sure why it's better in the OSS version that I've got. Let me put it that way. Iron Age, Phlebotomist, thanks for stopping by. Lording Wolfpack, another great choice. Pawpaw is in Florida, and GMT usually ships very late, so there you go. So yeah, I expect to get a notification pretty soon. Like I said, I'm not actually bent out of shape about it. If I have given that impression, then I am whining in a theatrical way. Just bought the digital version of Napoleon's Eagles. Difficult to wait. So this is potentially a problem. The Descartes do. You know what? I do like the graphics on the Gale Force 9 version. I actually had the Descartes version at one point. And there's very little like information on the cards that presents a problem if you don't speak French, but the rules were in French. So if you could find a rule book or download a rule book or whatever, then the Descartes edition is a really nice presentation of a fabulous game. Yeah, I mentioned this. Richard Galati, thanks for stopping by. There is a little like a mini SPI con. It doesn't look that mini either, to be completely honest. It looks bigger than Winterfest. At Historicon in Lancaster, PA. I forget exactly when the dates are for this. It's like in the next couple of months. I've never been to Historicon, and I have no immediate plans to go, but that does not mean I will absolutely never. It just means that I am vastly overcommitted to friggin' conventions at this point, and I really need to cut back. I have commitments that are going to send me to various conventions this year, but next year I'm planning on doing fewer conventions. I normally do 5 conventions a year, and it's just too much. Now, on the other hand, I could go to like Con on the Cobb, which is half an hour from here. I could do that. That's different. I'm not, whatever. Absolute worst rulebook in decades of wargaming. Schnell boats. Is that the first one or the second one? Devil boats, I think, was the first one. I didn't pick up either of these games, and the reaction to the first one, which again I think was Devil Boats, was predominantly negative. They are solitaire games with interesting topics. Schnell Boats 2. That was the designer Joe Carter's first game, so some folks were a little hard on him for that reason, but then Joe got on BGG and started talking, and I just don't think that a designer is going to come away. Somebody is going to assume that the design, viewing that conversation in context, I think more people than not are going to assume that the designer is being an asshole. Yeah, I don't think a designer is going to win that conversation, even if they think they won against the person they're having it with. Wolfpack. Yeah, that's exactly right. I have started, I have been looking for a new note-taking software. Cause right now, I have OneNote because I pay for Microsoft Office, and I fucking hate OneNote. I think it is a dreadful and exceptionally limited program. So I have found a new note-taking application that I've just installed in the last couple of days called Trillium, and I'm thinking of taking rules-reading notes in it as well. I think it is way more customizable than OneNote, even from what I've explored so far, which is not that much. Wargame influence Euro, Jason? Yeah, I think this is about accurate. I'm not sure that you could want to put that on the business card, but ASL rulebook epitomizes technical writing, much like an automobile shop manual that gives you a lot of detail on systems. It does not teach you how to play. Yes, but I will point out that in the introduction of, and I don't know if this was Don Greenwood writing this or not, I would think probably, in the introduction to the ASL rulebook to this day, they say this. They say we had a choice. We could create a game, a rulebook that would be easy to learn from. But then that's at odds with a game that's easy to a book that's easy to reference when you need to look stuff up. And there are a lot of rules, so they're going to be looking stuff up kind of a lot. So and they chose the latter, and I think that was a good choice. And I think the even better choice was the choice to consider that. I don't necessarily. I mean, it's possible to do a good rule book either way, but that is a question that a designer or the publisher or whoever should be asking, right? Oh, there you go, Neil Badkey. Apparently, I'm behind the curve on this stuff. Lock and Load has a digital version of the World at War 85. I haven't seen this. I think they may have a hyperlinked version of the Lock and Load tactical rules, though, which I've played and I think it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty solid World War II tactical game. This is a great example, Jeff T. recently saw the phrase "invest the city," and it means occupy all the surrounding hexes. And that I wouldn't make that assumption. I mean, that could mean just control the city hex, right? I don't know. This is very loose language for rules writing. I will rely on the folks in the chat to answer this question from Jeff Beeler because I have no idea. I do know that sort of regionally in this general part of the country, we do have a number of miniatures-focused events. Little Wars and Historicon. I don't remember where Cold Wars is another one. This is the HMGS, the Historical Miniatures Gaming Society, that runs, I think, some or all of these. And I think they have 4 conventions a year, roughly quarterly. I have never been to any of them, so I have no idea. But yeah, I mean, those are big time miniatures events. Those of us, Perfect Albion says, those of us in the past who learned to play Squad Leader up to GI were familiar with the system. Yeah, this is true, right? And they even told you at the time if you needed to learn. Again, this is in the rulebook well, it's in my rulebook. I'm not sure. Maybe they've edited this out now. But the rulebook used to say well into the MMP period, to learn the game, go get Squad Leader and learn that. And then you'll know almost, a lot of what you need to know for ASL. And this was, like 15 years after Squad Leader had ceased to be available at retail, right? So I don't know about Europe, but certainly the UK seems, that's the stereotype anyway. I don't know how true it is. I know there is some board wargaming happening in the UK though, and there seems to be plenty happening in Italy, France, and Germany. So I have almost everything except the clocks in the car and on the stove are just updated. So I keep looking at the stove and thinking it's an hour earlier. I got to fix that. So, Cardboard Commander, thanks for stopping by. William Aaron's bought Russia Besieged and the Finnish expansion, met the designer. There you go. And Art's a nice guy. I liked Art. We've met him a couple of times at Compass Expo. Russia Besieged is essentially, and I think Art puts it this way too, is basically Russian campaign on serious steroids. Yeah, there you go. Gimpy's got boot camp for World of War. World of War looks pretty decent, but it's like topically, I'm like, I don't know. I don't really want any more tactical games in that space. Tabletop's Edge says tons of minis war games in the Midwest. Yep, pretty much. East Coast has some big historical game cons. I wouldn't know anything about that. Frank says, often hard to find a specific rule in digital format rules. I kind of feel like this too, where I think it's easier for me to locate and navigate a physical rule book. Because let's grab a rule book, just whatever random rule book. Okay. And let's say that I need what's on page 432, but I don't know the page number, right? So if I'm sitting here with the digital rule book, that's me scrolling one page at a time. Now, I'll get to search in a second. That's me scrolling one page at a time until I find the thing that I'm looking for. Whereas, you know what? This ain't it. I can just, boom, here we go. Here it is, right? Flip a couple pages. Here we go right here. Boom. And I'm not talking about, rule books with like edge coding or anything like that. I just think it's easier for me. And this, this might be being an older person. It's just easier to find stuff in a physical rule book. But if I'm reading the rules, I would also like to be relaxed, and it's easier to do that with a digital book. For me. Some people will disagree with that, and that's fine. Frank also says more color coding rules might help in both formats. Shade color, not font color. Oh, font. I think the people putting rule books together probably should be very careful with colored fonts for a couple of reasons. One, some people are colorblind and will have an issue. And also, those can decrease readability, right? So I think you could use them, but I would use them use colored fonts with caution. Another interesting example this is the new Pathfinder rulebook, the current Pathfinder rulebook. And I think there are at least a couple examples in wargaming like this. There's basically a table of contents in the sidebar on every page, and where you are is actually highlighted. So if I know that I need to look at, equipment, then I can just leaf through until I see equipment come up, and there I am. So there's a lot of ways to organize rule books that I think other types of gaming are perhaps more up to speed on than wargamers. Let me put it, or wargaming, let me put it that way. All right, I have heard of Adepticon. I believe the reason I haven't investigated it more thoroughly is because it is primarily a miniatures event, which I am simply not doing. So, the famous Amish buffet. We've actually got an Amish buffet here in Ohio on 71 off of between Cleveland and Columbus, more toward Columbus. The Der Dutchman, and it's pretty good, but very good fried chicken. They've got some very good fried chicken there. All right, Maltov Cockatiel says that Fields of Fire is his favorite solo war game. It took 3 fan-made PDFs and multiple vids to make sense of the rules. So this is another one where I think the rule book just didn't help anybody, right? The people. So on the one hand, there was a generally negative reaction to the rule book. Those people who figured it out seem to like the game, but those are also people who are motivated enough by whatever other reasons, whether it's the topic or just the fact that it's out there or whatever, to figure it out, right? And they also bought it, presumably. So I have a literal financial incentive to figure out a game that I friggin' paid for, right? Trillium, the spelling of this, just one L. Search for Trillium Notes and you'll find it. Forlorn uses Trello for notes and project management. I may investigate that if I end up moving on from Trillium. Trillium is open source, by the way. So I was looking for an open source alternative, and I know some people make fun of me for often, but not always, preferring open source software. I would happily run Linux if it supported all the shit that I need to run. And can I make it work in Linux? Yeah, you can. But how much work is it? Whereas I can just click install if it's native Windows program and not worry about it, right? And the index in the ASL rulebook is also a good index, which is something that wargaming rulebooks have generally been fairly bad at. So if let's say I write a 60,000 word rulebook, okay, I'm just throwing that number out. I have no idea. And I decide I want an index for it. All right. And 60,000 words is probably way too much. Let's say 50,000, just, I guess whatever the number is, it doesn't matter. I think that the automatic indexing feature in Microsoft Word is what usually assembles the indexes that actually get printed in wargaming rulebooks. And that is not a good way to generate an index. Will it generate an index for you? Sure. It will be a not great index, however. There is a right way to do it, and that is not it. Now, on the other hand, if you've got like a 10-page thing and your index is like half a column, then maybe it's fine. But, acronyms do make the ASL rulebook shorter, however, and considering that it's humongous already, that may have been a consideration. Although there was a lot of acronyms in Squad Leader too. I think this is a really interesting approach. Garrison Venn asks, has anyone experimented with first developing rules in a flowchart or BNF form and then translating it to written form? I think that's an interesting idea. I'm not sure I've heard anybody mention that, but this is true. This is true. Also, I do want to do ArtyCon in 2026. It ain't going to happen in 2025 because I got too many conventions happening. But I would like to do ArtyCon in 2026. Con on the Cob is in Hudson, I think, which is, like I said, it's like half an hour north of here, pretty much. So we do not have a date or a site. So then that's kind of where we're at with that. Where we're at with it is Artie would like to do it is where we're at with that. And I won't say that no work has gone into it. I do have a list of prospective sites, but that's as far as I've gotten. I have actually made a couple of phone calls, but those were calls to folks, to locations that would not be suitable. All these, I don't know why I mean, I guess I could be convinced that Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or whatever is useful on your oven, but I don't see why off the top of my head. Mark Hodgkinson is introducing OCS to the Brisbane Wednesday group. CRT too random. No, I think this CRT is not that random. Actually, once you play with it a little bit, you will see that it is it sounds way more random than it is, and I think a lot of that is due to the surprise rule. But remember, surprise shouldn't happen that often, unless it's me. Then I get surprised all the time. This is another thing that is specific to war games, actually, and I've noticed this. One of the ways that wargame publishers have traditionally organized this has turned into a show about rules presentation, which I guess I'm okay with. We are, however, at 9:16. So before we get to Stigler's comment, we are going to hear from our good friends at Noble Knight Games. I am behind on the chat. Somebody has probably already reminded me. Take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
So thanks, Noble Knight, for being the official sponsor of the Counterclipping Show. And of course, there is an affiliate link in the video description. If you use that affiliate link, you don't get like a confirmation or anything. It just kind of shows up on my account over at Noble Knight as store credit. And we are working towards War in Europe, the Decision Revised Edition, which a buddy of mine does have, and which I would like to have as well. So, I don't have a progress report. We are actually, that says 15. We're actually at 16% at the moment. But I have not gotten an update in the last couple of weeks. So we'll presumably have an update on that soonish. But they get to it once a month, pretty much. Anyway, Stigler. Where's the friggin' post now? All right. Stigler says that if a game is I go, you go with a movement phase and a combat phase, that's pretty easy. But if you have combat during movement and other interconnected concepts and reaction, then it can get, presumably he's going to say it's going to get harder to present the rules. One of the traditional ways that war games have presented rules is in order of the sequence of play. Which normally I think is a great start, right? That's a good, perfectly decent way to do it. However, there are some systems, and this is kind of what Stigler's getting at here, where there's like an action phase. GBACW works this way. BCS works this way, where there's like this action phase that the vast majority of the game's activity happens in. And that makes it basically impossible to try to present the rules in the order of the sequence of play, because everything happens in one phase, pretty much, even if there are individual pulses within that phase, which there typically are. All right, Danny Gable asks, is there any logic or strategies in buying into ASL beyond rulebook starter kit? Beyond, well, I guess what I would say is, do you plan to host ASL? Because if so, then you probably want more of the core modules. Do you need them all? Absolutely not. But I would definitely like to have a core set of ASL. To me, includes the rulebook, Beyond Valor, and probably Yanks. And then you can kind of add to that based on your own interests, right? But if you're not playing at your place with your stuff, then you will save an absolute shit ton of money by playing with somebody else's stuff. And in that case, if you've got the rule book and can play the scenarios, then yeah, maybe don't. That's okay. Mark Hodgkinson says we need a rule book standards. Movement should always be section 4. I mean, I wouldn't mind this. I think you will have a difficult time getting absolutely everybody on board. And like I said, the kind of rulebook I was just talking about, where there's like an action phase of some kind, would not be particularly good for that. Mike Reed mentions the living rulebook phenomenon. Great to get an electronic copy, but that means the printed one in the game is obsolete. We can blame GMT, but I mean they're certainly not the only ones doing this now. They may have been an early adopter of e-rulebooks. I'm not sure. On some older games, it will still send you to the old, big, long, just big linear list of living rules, at least relatively recently. I mean, what do the changes amount to, right? Are they clarifications that most people manage to figure out themselves? If so, who cares? Are they like typo type errors where there's like a chart in a rule book and they transpose some numbers or something like that? That's kind of a problem. I generally favor some kind of living rules approach. For one thing, because it means that, in almost every case, it means that the designer has continued to remain involved and invested in the game that they designed and sold to you, right? So just that, as indicated by the presence of a living rulebook in many cases, I think is a good thing. All right, we're trying to get caught up. I think that if at this point, I think the electronic ASL rulebook is the way to go. And if you, like me, prefer a physical copy at the table, get the pocket rulebook. It's cheaper, it's easier to carry around, and you don't have to worry about the bullshit errata pages that you have to slip in after every new module. So I haven't done this, but what I do is I put all my PDFs into OneDrive. So OneDrive is Microsoft's cloud storage solution. It's their version of Dropbox or whatever, or Google Drive, right? The advantage of OneDrive is that it is kind of built into Windows. You will have a OneDrive folder in your file explorer, so you can just put stuff in there. It will upload to the cloud. From using it professionally, I've worked at 3 different companies that have used OneDrive now, and because in business there may be a time frame where hey, I need this file and I can't download it from OneDrive. As a personal user, I could care less about that. If it uploads, it'll sync when it syncs. I don't care about that. I store all of my rulebooks, all of my Vassal modules, all of the Vassal save games in a fairly anally organized folder on OneDrive, so I can access it from the desktop, the laptop. I can even look at rule books on the phone or a tablet or whatever. I do this with RPG PDFs as well. So, great choice by Christopher Smith as picking up By Swords and Bayonets. It's going to be the perfect, long term, it's going to be the perfect entry point to that series. It's actually probably... I wonder how Stigler feels about simple Great Battles of the American Civil War not being ready in time for By Swords and Bayonets, but being ready in time for the new 3 Days of Gettysburg, actually. These can often be exceptionally handy. The little flip cards that somebody made, I forget who, for like D-Day at Omaha Beach, just tremendously ease the play of that game, at least until you get the hang of it. I at the same time, should the publishers be reliant on fans to create this material? The reason I use the term hobby gaming is, and even if it's an imperfect term right now, is because there are some people who are super into the games that they play, whether they are war games or RPGs or Euros, frankly. Okay, and what do we call all those people? We can't just call them gamers, because that includes video game. Well, I mean, the term gamers includes video gamers too, right? So, to the extent that there's crossover, I don't think there's a good term for serious game people. Let me put it that way. All right. Papa says, vote for St. Pete Beach in February. That would be a fantastic time of year to go there. I can tell you that. I've been there in the summer, but to Tampa anyway, and it's a fucking hellhole. in July when I was there. On the other hand, I've been to Miami, and I realize the climate in Miami is a bit, it's like South Florida is a little different, but it was exceptionally pleasant being in Miami in November. So this is true too. Not everybody, say you're playing a vassal game with 4 people, one person should have the game by the honor system, and I fully support that idea. What do you do for the rules for everybody else, right? If there is no PDF, and there are some publishers that don't do it, or well, maybe it's a game, a very old game that there just doesn't exist for, right? I'd be fine with this personally. I think there are. I will differ from Stigler in that I think there are legitimate and ethical uses for AI, and that is not what we are currently seeing at a commercial level. Let me put it that way. What I see right now is a lot of stuff that looks either like bullshit or is just predatory. Well, and yet people do complain. I'm like I said, I'm happy with that there are living rules. Yeah, see, that's the thing, is it's a large language model. It's not really knowledgeable about anything. It's literally juiced up predictive text is what we are now calling AI that we see doing all this stuff. So we had an interview with Harry Sean Sullivan. Thanks for stopping by. Several months ago at this point. And I guess there are going to be some changes in the latest edition of WIF. But yeah, that thing gets updated all the time. And I don't know if I'm not sure I knew there was a schedule, but that gets regularly updated, the World in Flames living rules. Well, I will tell you this, Tony Mammal, that the new edition of Three Dog will be a much better introduction to the system than the last version was. The problem with the last, I've bitched about this for a long time. The problem with the last version, Three Dog 3rd edition, is that there's really no learning path. There's big scenarios, and that's it. The new one will have a lot more scenarios, and that by itself is a tremendous boon for entering that system. And my understanding is that they will also include the simple GBACW rules in that, which sounds like it's going to make it another really good entry point. But I do think Swords and Bayonets is the natural entry point for that. So Mike Reed says that you should buy the EASL rulebook, find somebody to learn from. Yes, I will agree with that advice. If you can't, you can't. It's going to be very difficult to learn from that rulebook, which is one reason why the starter kits have been so popular. If you click with it, buy Beyond Valor and Yanks, what that will give you is Beyond Valor will have the Germans, the Russians, ASL calls them Russians, and all the markers, okay? Not all the markers, but like all the different markers that you need for play. And then Yanks gives you the Americans, and that completes the trio from the classic squad leader, and you can get a lot of play just out of those 3 modules. So, okay, so yeah, well, there we go. Now we know. Stegler would have actively resisted having the simple GBACW rules in the same box with Beyond Swords and Bayonets. Down that road is Labatai. And I don't necessarily disagree with this. I cannot imagine that I am not a series or system expert for this series, okay? I've played it several times, and I have enjoyed it, and I am happy to continue playing with the regular rules. I do not believe that the simple GBACW rules are for me. On the other hand, if some people use that as a gateway to learning the game or as a lighter alternative to play the same games with less rules overhead, cool. I just don't need that personally. There are some like meeting sync calendar sync tools in OneNote that are useful, but I mean, I don't really use them that often at work. I certainly don't need them here. So generally speaking, I do think that you have to say that having multiple rule sets operating in parallel for a given game is generally undesirable. I will absolutely say that. Now, the standard bearer for this is, of course, Labatai, as Stigler knows. And I think having played a couple of those now, I am less uncomfortable with it. but it is still not really a desirable situation. So, well, yeah, exactly. This would be worth doing. I would love to do that, but I'm more likely to do a number of other things prior to any such thing occurring. And this is essentially true, right? What we are currently calling AI on the internet, right? There's AI that's like real AI that we're still working on. It's not really intelligent right now. It's predictive text is pretty much, and it's just got everything everybody puts on the internet. It goes through that stuff and says, okay, we've just had these 3 words in a row. What is likely to come after as the next word? And that's what you get. There's all kinds of weird bugs and stuff like that. Like, how many L's are in this word, and it can't tell you because it doesn't know, because that's not a question that's in the database. All right, but 3Dog, the big new 3Dog will have minimap scenarios. This is going to be a huge improvement for accessibility over the previous edition. Hey, I wouldn't complain. I would buy it. And you know what? When I was kind of walking back and forth and pacing in the game room a couple of whatever this was 2 weeks ago, perhaps thinking about, it's probably time to start thinking about unloading some stuff. There were certain things that I didn't even glance at, right? Because I knew there was no chance I'm getting rid of any of this product. GBACW's on that list. GCACW's on that list. OCS, Library of Napoleonic Battles, the series that you hear me talk about all the time. Generally, those we were not dumping copies of any of that. And the only one of those series that I really have anything extra for is OCS, where I do have 3 duplicates. But those were duplicates bought for a reason, and I will not be parting with them for that reason. Now, that said, I do have that extra Forgotten Battles, so I will remind everybody that at some point, and I will not advance, I might put it in the title or on the thumbnail, but I won't advance it in and announce, we are going to give away a copy of the Forgotten Battles on this show. So at some point, not tonight. I think this can be true, and people have made this. So Stigler says that, does anyone think that simple rules just get people started with bad habits that they'll have to unlearn if they later decide to jump into the full rules set? It's interesting that you should say this, because this is a criticism I do see about the ASL starter kit. For example, there are some bad habits that somebody using the full rule set will be able to exploit if one is only experienced with starter kit. That is true. You can just stay with starter kit, though. And, I think that's a completely legitimate decision. You have a whole universe of additional options if you go into the full series, like full ASL. But at the same time, we're getting more starter kit stuff all the time. There's going to be a starter kit magazine. There have been several scenario packs, so there's kind of a lot of content for starter kit now. It's just because there's so much content for full ASL, it looks minuscule in comparison, but it's more than you had back in the day playing Squad Leader and GIN, up through GI Anvil of Victory. And Joe Mentum says that the multiple rules are what prompted him to get into Labatt. Or is it just the opportunity to aggravate Stigler some more? I will tell you, and I'll let Stigler opine on this too. I do think that Into the Woods might be the most complicated GBACW game that I've seen. A lot of that is down to just games. It's just game specific stuff, right? But like the multiple types of woods and stuff like that, it's a lot to keep track of. So, and there you go. Eric Hansen doesn't need it. And I don't think I need it either. I think I'd be perfectly happy playing Into the Woods. So, I have mixed feelings about programmed instruction. And bear in mind that I don't have a lot of games that use programmed instruction. However, I did do the old Squad Leader back in the day, and that used it too. The trouble with it, at least in that instance, is that you played to the end, and then suddenly you you've learned all these rules now because you've played all 10 scenarios or whatever it was, and now you don't have any more scenarios. So you're going to replay the last couple repeatedly and then get bored of it unless you go get more scenarios, which you could do, but they're not in the box. So if somebody wanted to do, is it chapter K that they did, which is like this extremely tedious rules walkthrough of you moving units, and fuck that. Nobody is dumb enough to need those rules explained in that way. Let me put it that way. I found it, I tried it. It was incredibly frustrating and sluggish, and I was bored and didn't go very far with it. This is another good point. The ASL starter kit number 1 is like, what, $30 or $35? It is very inexpensive. I think there are only 6 scenarios in it, but then if you buy like a couple scenario packs, you could triple that very easily. So, depending on what is available at the time. And as Mike Weiss points out, there's people have done this. Plus, if you do the starter kit is kind of programmed instruction in a way, because starter kit number 1 gives you just the basics, and starter kit number 2 brings in ordnance, number 3 brings in vehicles, number 4 brings in the Pacific and concealment, and a couple of other things maybe. As the main, I don't like programmed instruction as the main way to present the game. That said, there's exceptions, because I kind of like the way that Jerry White did it in Enemy Coast Ahead, right? Where you start with this tiny scenario that's just like the last part, and it's very easy. And then gradually you add more and more and more and more until you're finally playing the whole campaign. But then you could, to me, the big campaign is the appeal, right? So with all the planning and all that stuff. So, but once you do that, you can keep playing the full campaign, and it's like a whole game, right? It's not just, it doesn't feel like just a scenario. It feels like a whole robust game on its own. All right. So, well, that's another really good thing about, and that's another good point. I would not say that programmed instruction is really the way that the rules are presented in Pacific War. I would call it kind of staged presentation, in the sense that, okay, so you're going to learn Pacific War. So you're going to learn the engagement scenarios. You're going to start with those. Read these 5, whatever it is, rules sections, and you're fine. Then play a few of those, move up to the battle scenarios, play a few of those, move up to the campaign scenarios. As far as I'm concerned, you could play the selection of campaign scenarios that's present in Pacific War is a lifetime of play. So, they are scenarios, but some of those are big scenarios. I had, I don't spend very much time on Consim World, to be completely honest about it. I think it's a lot of infighting that I just don't want to deal with. I pop in there every once in a while if I'm looking for something specific, but generally I don't very often. I think it is an incredibly primitive looking site, and that isn't a deal breaker, but it is a disincentive to hang out there a lot. All right. William Aarons has Passive Glory, Pursuit of Glory for the People in 1960. And those all have they are all the Stukajo designed the solo system, which is the GMT CDG solo system that they've done a couple of modules on at this point. And that method could absolutely be used for other games too. I don't know to what extent they're fine-tuned. That method is fine-tuned for the specific games that are covered. Let me put it that way. Yeah, kind of. I could see that. I could 100% see that. All right, we are caught up on the chat, which is fantastic. So, you are biased, Stigler, but that is understandable in this case. Now, this is completely legit. Sometimes it just doesn't work for whatever reason, right? Sometimes things don't work because this show has gone quickly. Sometimes things don't work because of like table chemistry, right? I've had that happen where it's like I played Knights Black Agents. I played, and it's an RPG. I played it at Origins, and it just I wasn't the people. A couple of the people at the table were just really rubbing me the wrong way, and I didn't blow up or anything, but I was like, yeah, this was not a great experience. Sometimes that's why. Sometimes it's just like, I'm really not that into this. Sometimes the rules are confusing. There's so many reasons why you would not like a particular game. We don't have to be as forgiving as we have historically been in this respect. I would encourage us to be very, very empathetic to the people and maybe be a little harder on the games. And yeah, table chemistry is a very real thing, and not just in RPGs. I would be interested in seeing statistics that no one, to my knowledge, has ever compiled of seeing how many convention games of diplomacy end in fistfights. I would imagine that number is not zero, right? And while that is an extreme example of table chemistry gone awry, that is the phenomenon, right? That you're talking about. Now, most games are not as cutthroat as diplomacy or prone to a sudden but inevitable betrayal, right? And you know what? I mean, so I guess we've got about 20 minutes, so I'm going to talk about Christophe de Klerk here, and I'm going to try and do this in a relaxed way, okay? So back in the, let's call it the 90s, okay? 90s, 80s, 90s. I'm going to call it the 90s. I was online practically in, by like 1991, 92, something like that, right? In, using the methods that you had online at the time. And I was also hanging around a lot at the local game store, and I was I continue to be very opinionated. I would like to think I'm being less of an asshole about it. Indeed, Ken X or Ken 10. That is where that line comes from. So I used to be very crabby, and I used to be on like kind of a personal crusade against systems I didn't like, right? The big victim for me was D&D, right? Where I had issues with it, and I kind of extrapolated that. And while I never took it as far as saying anybody that plays D&D is an idiot or anything like that. People said stuff like that, and much more recently than that, in fact. I was an asshole about it, okay? And ultimately, we are engaged in an activity that, unless we are on the professional side of wargaming, is ultimately recreational. And if it's making us miserable, we should reconsider our approach or find a different hobby. I have very little patience for, and I feel like sometimes this comes off as insincere. Hey, play what you want, but I really strongly feel that as a core value as a gamer, people need to play what they want, right? If somebody's super into Wingspan and they're not interested in Case Blue, have a great time playing Wingspan, man. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I like a bunch of weird shit. Who am I to tell anybody else that they're wrong about what they like? Now, I am aware that we can draw objective conclusions sometimes, but most of the time, the type of conversation that happens is rooted in personal opinions and personal tastes. And I think it was a growth moment for me to recognize that other people's personal tastes are not less legitimate than mine. I feel like I have historically tended to gravitate toward less popular things, but I don't like wargaming, for example, but I don't necessarily think that that's because they're less popular. It's because I have peculiar tastes by mainstream standards. And if somebody, people play the shit. Fantasy football. I have no interest in that at all. No, and I like baseball. No interest in fantasy baseball at all. No interest at all. I would 10 times out of 10 rather play Dungeons and Dragons. And those people playing that are not really less nerdy than the people playing Dungeons and Dragons. Okay? They're really not. They're super into it, and that's great. That's great that they're super into it. I am happy that they are super into it, and I hope that they are having a good time. But for me, at least, part of having a good time was being less pissed off that other people were having a good time. So, anyway, so I want 100% endorse this approach too. All right, we gotta end up on the chat. I mean, I agree, but I would venture to say that I would probably bet $1 right now that there has been a convention game of diplomacy that ended in a fistfight. Is that inappropriate? Yes, it is. Nobody should do that. The worst thing I can imagine doing personally is stomping out. That's the word. I'm not going to crank anybody. Carl, thanks for stopping by. He's probably been gone for a couple of minutes at least. There you go. See, this sounds like a good dynamic to me. Yeah, that might be it. It could have been just, I feel like even today in my elder years, I feel like even today I am continuing to grow as a person and as a gamer and as a creator and all those things. And I think that's great. I am a firm believer in lifelong learning, and Wargames is one of my avenues for doing that. I do feel right now, and this is no guarantee I will feel the same way in a year. I feel right now that as a creative outlet, I would be better off doing that creative work in RPGs than, and I'm talking about designing in this context. I think I could design a better RPG than I could design a wargame. But, everybody's got to start somewhere. So, and none of my wargame design projects have gone anywhere. So, yeah, this sounds extreme. I'll gotta say that. You know what? I would bet money that Warhammer games have ended periodically in fistfights too. How about that? I didn't know that. Thank you, Jeff Beeler, for mentioning that in the chat. Today is Richard Berg's birthday, so happy birthday, Mr. Berg, and farewell. There you go. This looks pretty interesting, actually. Well, I mean, so the Starfleet Battles crowd is probably pretty similar demographically to the ASL crowd, to be honest about it. So I was not yelling at anybody here in the chat, by the way. I was not trying to lecture anybody here, because I think everybody here is laid back and on this same general page as me. But, and yes. Oh, I got to put this on the wall. Damn it, I got to put this on the wall. No fighting. This is the war room. You can't fight in here. Fantastic. And it is a great movie. And High Fidelity is a pretty good movie, too. Grosse Pointe Blank's good. Better Off Dead. It's a movie I appreciated more when I was the right age to appreciate it. Very few of those teenager movies are movies I would rewatch today. Probably the one that I would is probably The Breakfast Club, because that came out, I think I was in high school at the time. And like Emilio Estevez's character in the movie, I was on the wrestling team. But I also identify, and I think this was kind of the point of the way the movie was written. It's like you identify with all of these people, right? Maybe not Claire, but I identified with basically everybody else to some extent. Less so to Ali Sheedy's character too, whose character name I don't remember. Claire was Molly Ringwald's character, and I had a major crush on Molly Ringwald at that age. Let me tell you. I think Jack Black peaked in High Fidelity. I am not a big Jack Black fan. I have found him obnoxious more often than not. You're doing great. Christoph, you're doing great. Don't worry about it at all. So I understand lots of people like Jack Black. You're welcome to him. Cool. Have fun with Mr. Black. Everybody I knew. That's for sure. Less of a fan of Pretty in Pink, or 16 Candles for that matter. I am not saying that Jack Black is terrible in everything. I'm saying that it is a disincentive for me to watch something if Jack Black is in it. So, well, I mean, consider though that there's basically two adults in the movie, right? There's the janitor and there's the principal. Paul. I'm trying to remember the name of the actor who played the principal. And why that's interesting is that he was in Paul Gleason, Doc Savage, Man of Bronze, and also in Trading Places. So I did not watch The Outsiders. I'm not sure I've ever seen it. I have read the book. It was a piece of assigned reading. I have seen School of Rock, and I appreciate the sentiment behind School of Rock. I still think Jack Black was obnoxious in it. So, there you go. There you go. Clarence Beeks. That was the character, Paul Gleason's character from... and Paul Gleason was in Die Hard, too, wasn't he? He was one of the cops. He was one of Al's superiors or something like that. Diane Lane's been great in a lot of stuff. I have also not liked any of the Tenacious D that I've heard, which is not a lot. So, frankly. So. Now, if Jack Black was great in High Fidelity. He kind of stole every scene he was in. So there's that. But I'm not a fan of his more recent work. So. I think Diane Lane is a 40s me crush, not a 18 me crush, though. That's the thing. Oh yeah, I mean, again, this is why it's such a good movie. Is that you can see every teenager you can see in every one of those characters, right? And I, as a teenager at the time, saw myself to some extent in every one of those characters, especially in Emilio Estevez's character, especially in Judd Nelson's character, and frankly in Anthony Michael Hall's character. By the way, Anthony Michael Hall is what was my wife watching? Is that Anthony Michael Hall? And he's like playing some gangster. It's a new production of some kind. I forget what it is. Oh wow! You know what? I was really unaware of The Runaways until later. It is Reacher. It's the new season of Reacher, which I am not watching, by the way. People get all bent out of shape about Mary Sue's sometimes. You know who's a Mary Sue? Jack Reacher. Which is not to say the show's bad. I think that actually, from what I've seen of the show, it's actually probably pretty good. There's a scene in the first season I think I watched the first episode of it. In the first episode where Reacher's like some abusive boyfriend is screaming at his woman, and Reacher kind of walks by. And the movie soundtrack is the soundtrack that's being played over that scene is Howlin' Wolf. They got a lot of credit from me for using Howlin' Wolf, because Howlin' Wolf is friggin' awesome. I almost thought that Cadillac Records, to me, that was one of the highlights of that. A very good movie, by the way. Adrian Brody's in that. I'm being very bad with names. But it's a good movie. I'm not a big fan of Beyonce in that movie. I think she kind of deflates the film whenever she's on screen, including when she is singing, and she is a good singer. But the rest of the movie I thought was really good, and I especially liked the dynamic between Adrian Brody's character, Muddy Waters, and Howlin' Wolf. I thought that was really cool. So... Well, yeah, you're right. They actually say this at the end of the movie, right? So, yeah, absolutely. And then you see Anthony Michael Hall in the movie where he plays like a high school quarterback, and it's actually an interesting movie. I picked up a huge box set of Howlin' Wolf stuff, and it's all awesome. I love Howlin' Wolf. I'm a huge fan now. So... Well, I mean, remember, as we get older, right? I have considerably less. I have less tolerance for watching like obnoxious kids in movies now than I used to. But that bothered me even as a kid, right? It's like, why do we have to? I don't want to. I don't want to watch Zan and Jane of the Wonder Twins. I want to watch fucking Batman. Why do I have to deal with these kids? Just because? Oh, we have to have characters that the kids will. No, not really. Not really. If the material is relatable to the kids, that's good enough. So, I'm not also not a Tom Waits fan, but I also haven't really investigated Tom Waits either. So I'm just not the right person to ask. The Mikey of Wargaming. So, yeah, I highly recommend it, actually. So I took it, and it's probably the class, actually. At Ohio State, we had to take a performing arts, yeah, I think it was a performing arts class. And you could do this if you were like a musician, but I'm not. So, I had to take like, movie criticism or movie appreciation or something like that. So what I took was a history of rock and roll. And when it was most interesting was it was more interesting at the beginning because it was all the formative influence, which included like a bunch of the country influences on rock and roll and the blues influences and the different types of blues that were around. And we spent a lot of time on that, and that was fantastic. And even when you start to transition into rock and roll, I will tell you that because it was in like a music auditorium, so it was a room that had really good acoustics and had a really good sound system. And yes, there were 250 people in the class because it's Ohio State. But it makes a big difference to like listen to something like Little Richard on a really good sound system. That made a big difference for me. Big difference. So a lot of stuff. Fast Times at Ridgemont. You know what? I would watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High pretty much just for Mr. Hand, who was awesome. I am Mr. Hand. That guy was great. Love that guy. Cranky. Love that guy. Now, see, I don't mind being cranky. I do think this is probably an accurate statement, I gotta say. This is true, right? But I'm also, there's a lot of folks, play older games, right? I guess we can wrap with this. A lot of folks play older games too. And I same deal as before. I am happy those folks are having fun with their older games. And there's some older games that I like. I mean, at this point, how old is Flat Top, for Pete's sake? And I'll play that. No problem. But at the same time, a lot of that is driven by nostalgia, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with being nostalgic. I am nostalgic too. I'm just not necessarily nostalgic enough to try to play those kinds of games anymore because I've been through that already and would like to do new stuff now, right? I liked Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters, everybody's seen it a million times. I think. I don't know. It's certainly quotable and cheesy. Ray Walston, yeah, the late great Ray Walston. He was great in everything that I ever saw him in. I mean, he even elevated My Favorite Martian, and that was hard material to elevate. He was also in the original as was Molly Ringwald, the original miniseries adaptation of Stephen King's The Stand, which I really liked, by the way. Gary Sinise was in that. Laura San Giacomo was in that. Matt Frewer was in. A lot of people were in that. There was a more recent remake on one of the pay networks now that's supposedly not that good, with Whoopi Goldberg as Mother Abigail. I'm not sold on that. I don't think that's a bad choice. Whoopi Goldberg's actually a pretty good actress. But that aside, it generally was not that warmly received from what I understand. Yes, they are. They are still around. Who was it? Asia is still around. The only remaining founding member of Asia is Jeff Downs at this point. I did not know that until I read it just a couple of days ago. I have, at one point, somebody, I could dig these out because I have some of them. Somebody was redoing the Doc Savage stories in like a pulp magazine format. And every time you bought one, you got like 2 of the Doc Savage books. And they did this with Doc Savage and The Shadow. And I got a bunch of those. And that's pretty cool stuff, I think. You know, it's dated, right? But you know, there's that. Nah, I don't need to do this. Thank you, John, for the helpful advice, however. Oh, Vision Quest. I have no desire to watch this nowadays. But the movie Vision Quest, again, you know, I was in high school on the wrestling team, and it's a movie about a high school wrestler with Matthew Modine and I can't. I'm doing very bad remembering people's names. Valley Girl did have Nick Gage in it, yeah, and Deborah Foreman, who was another teen crush of mine, although it was a little early. So, yeah, but Alan Parsons is Alan Parsons, right? There's a new Jethro Tull album. I actually listened to one of the tracks off of it. It's not too bad. I will investigate it further at a later time. So, Linda Fiorentino was the lead actress in Vision Quest. So, Nick Cage was in Fast Times, I believe. As I recall. All right, folks, we are just about out of time. So I want to thank everybody for stopping by tonight. We do have the Chit Show on Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That will be this coming Sunday. Our featured guest will be Mr. Meandering Mike. We're delighted to have Mike on. We're going to talk about collecting games and organizing games and all that jazz. And probably bullshit some too. There might be an unboxing video this week, but it ain't going to happen on Thursday. And I've got to get some other follow-ups too. Incidentally, apropos of nothing in particular, the Harn video I did about 3 weeks ago has 34,000 views. I have no idea what happened. So we will be following that up with additional Harn content. None of my previous Harn content did anything like that. Cool, and it's added a whole bunch of new subscribers too. So if you're new to the show, welcome to the show. And we will try and make you happy here. So everybody have a great rest of the night, and I will see you all again very soon.